Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 1 of Help Me Process. This is a weekly ish video memo series, casual, um, of an external processor. That's me attempting to make sense of her experiences. And so, our first episode is around Sundown Towns. So I have recently gotten into Lovecraft Country, which is, I was very reluctant because I'm a scaredy cat and I don't like horror. But come to find out, it's really not as bad as I thought it was in my head. So if you're not familiar with Lovecraft Country, I'm not going to define it, but it's like the sci-fi race centered show on HBO centered in the mid 1950s. So of course, mid 1950s, we're in the middle of Jim Crow, and other racist structural things that are happening. And so you essentially have Black people who are fighting white supremacy and monsters, which oddly enough, the monsters make more sense than the white supremacy. That's another time. But what it made me think of is that we still have sundown towns. When I was in high school, my mother was a home health nurse. So she would go to different people's houses to take care of them. In high school, I had to stay after for some type of practice. I don't know, maybe it was basketball or dance or something like that. Well, my mom was running a little late and she came and got me. And so that meant she was running late to her final visit of the day. I'm from a smallish town, Ocala, Florida. And there was this town right outside of Ocala called Hogtown. And my mother said that I have to go to Hogtown for my last visit and I'm running late. And so you have to come with me. So that wasn't a big deal. I was just in the car. So we get to this place. It's kind of in the woods. A lot of Confederate flags. And so she said to me, if I don't leave this house in 30 minutes, you need to drive home. So if I don't come out, she said, if I don't come out of this house in 30 minutes, you need to leave and drive home. And I thought, wait, what? What's happening here? She said, just do it. I said, Mom, I'm not leaving you. She said, 30 minutes. That was the longest 30 minutes of my whole life. I remember I was like 15, maybe 16. I was like the age of my son right now. And I'm sitting so I moved from the passenger seat to the driver's seat. I left the car running. I opened up the passenger door thinking like, okay, if she has to run out, like she don't have to like fiddle with the door. And so she comes out and everything's fine. And I was like, what is happening here? She said, well, there's a company-wide policy that Black nurses are not allowed to go to certain areas, certain towns after dark. And Hogtown was one of those towns because there was a fear that you as a Black person would be harmed. And so that concept wasn't new to me, right? So I understood that there are places that Black people, where I'm from, generally there's an understanding that there are places that Black people don't go if it's after dark, but never heard of it being called a sundown town. That was a new phrase for me. Maybe that I learned, maybe I was a full adult when I learned about sundown towns. I'll say that. And I was like, oh, there was a whole name for those things. And after watching Lovecraft and that first episode around Sundown Towns, it reminded me of several things. So one, that time as a teenager where my mother was willing to oddly risk her life to help what she understood to be a white supremacist who she thought could potentially kill her and just wanted to make sure they didn't kill me. Like, what? But it also made me think of a few other times when I felt like I ran into or experienced this concept of sundown towns. And one of them being when we used to drive from Florida to Baltimore a couple times. My father's family is in Baltimore. And of course, going from from Florida to Maryland, you have to go through Georgia. And so my mom and I believe it was my grandma, me and my little brother, they had this big map, like a physical map. No GPS at this time. I'm probably like 10 or something. And I remember them marking on the map, like, these are the places we cannot stop. And I didn't think much of it. And so right before we would get to these towns, we would get a bunch of food. They would tell everybody, I think also my cousin was there. So all the kids, y'all need to use the bathroom, get something to eat, don't get anything to drink because we're not stopping in these towns. And I remember the first one being in Georgia, and I don't remember the name of the town. But I remember being hyper aware of what was going on in this town and why we couldn't stop. It was never explained. My mother just said, like, black people shouldn't stop here. That's just essentially what she said. Now, this is like the 90s. Like, this isn't 54. So I also remember coming back from Baltimore and same situation. And my mother was like, okay, these are the places that we can probably stop, these places we can't stop. And I think my mother like misjudged the like how much gas she needed or how far this place was. And I want to say the name of the town was Lynchburg, Virginia. I'm pretty sure. I know it's called Lynchburg. I feel like Lynchburg is in Virginia or Kentucky. I don't remember. I remember distinctly that the city name was Lynchburg. And so my mom was like, well, we have to stop here, but I'm getting gas. Y'all stay in the car. Do not get out. It's daylight, mind you. Still the 90s. But I was like, Mama, I use the bathroom. She was like, no, you're going to have to hold it. You're going to have to hold it. You can't come in. You're going to have to stay in. I said, Mama, I have to use the bathroom. So she's like, fine. So I go into the bathroom. Well, I go into the gas station, and this older white man is at the register. I was like, excuse me, where's your bathroom? And he just casually like points to this door. So I go in this door, and this bathroom looks like it has never been cleaned. Now, you know, there's like when people it's just like clearly nobody's mopped here. No, it's like there were like feces on the wall, like somebody took feces and just like designed something, like, and it was just like gross. It was literally like I'm surprised I didn't see maggots. Like, it was just, I probably were. I don't remember. It was flies. And I was like, what in the world? And I remember coming out of there, and I remember seeing this white man coming in and then going to another door on the other side. And I vaguely remember either he asked where the restroom was or the sign said restroom, and I didn't see that when I came in. And I was like, oh, okay. And so then I was like, okay, it's time to go. My mom's like, it's getting dark. Yeah, we gotta go. But she never actually like said Sundown House. But I understood, okay, there are places where we can and cannot go. And so that brings me to me now being here in Columbus, Ohio. And generally growing up understanding that the North was supposed to be like nicer and better. But also having an understanding as I got older and like read and stuff that, the North is just really the South It just looks a little different. It just looks a little different, but it is not. No. So it made so I what I remember, there's these two towns, one called Upper Arlington and one called Bexley, and some would categorize them as suburbs, but they're really not suburbs because suburb means suburban, like right outside the urban center. But these are both technically urban, so but they're known to be majority white. Me and some colleagues and I will often go to this one grocery store in Upper Arlington, and it had a second floor where you can sit and do homework and stuff. So we would, um, so some of my colleagues and I would go over there to do work. It was quiet, you get something to eat, things like that. Well, one time, or a few times when they went and I wasn't there, they would leave the grocery store that it stayed open. Like I want to say it was 24 hours, but it stayed open pretty late. A local police officer would always follow them to the edge of the town. There's like a stopping port. I want to say it's like Lane Avenue and Kenny. I'm not sure what it is, but every time, which is very similar to the way the scene happened in Lovecraft. Not as dangerous, but the premise is the same. And it's not completely ironic that now Upper Arlington is doing some work around race, but I'm not sure they quite realize the systems that are in place within that neighborhood that essentially let people, not everybody, but some people of color know. I can't speak for everybody. Let them know that they're not necessarily welcome there. The other town or area is called Bexley, which is interesting because one of the things it's known for is being a Jewish community. And there was a time, of course, when it was written into deeds that people who were Jewish and Black could not purchase a home, believing it'll bring down the property value. Well, many Jewish people were able to kind of get past that. Arguably, it had a lot to do with whiteness, but yet they were able to do that. What I find very interesting is a few things. One, I feel like sometimes people don't recognize the power of whiteness, even if you have some other factors that marginalize you. I imagine if you had Arab or Black Jews who wanted to buy houses there, they wouldn't be a part of that that barrier breaking that happened. But also the ways in which folks in that community still did not allow Catholicism to be there. So you don't have a Catholic church in the actual Bexley vicinity. And that was also a deed rule that you couldn't sell to a Catholic, which is interesting, right? And also, of course, I don't know of any folks who identify as Jewish in Bexley who are advocating at that early time. So redlining being the 1930s-ish, and I'm not quite sure when Jewish folks in Bexley began to break that barrier, but I'm not sure if they were advocating for Black people to purchase houses. But nevertheless, I heard a story from one of my workshops that this woman who lives in Bexley has a person come to help her clean her house, and she's a woman of color. I'm not quite sure if she's Black, but she's not white. And this woman, almost every time she would come to be and go to this woman in Bexley's house, she would get stopped by the Bexley police for nothing. She's not speeding. They would just always pull her over. And so she kept being late. Well, the woman who was employing her just kept asking why she kept being late, and then the woman told her. Well, so the woman who was hiring this other woman of color called the Bexley police and was like, hey, she keeps getting pulled over. What's that about? And so the Bexley police apparently told her, well, just tell your employee to just call us to let us know when she's coming in and when she's leaving, and her license plate number, so we know not to pull her over. What? Like, and I can't tell you how many people that I know who always get pulled over, black people, who always get pulled over by Bexley police. They're not doing anything. They're just asking where they are. And so, I just want us to be thinking about the ways in which sundown towns, although we formerly don't have them anymore, they still exist. And I'm interested in knowing if you all know of any sundown towns or the ways in which people and police um, create this type of surveillance of people of color in this under this guise of safety. But are we asking really safety for whom? Because if you wanted to keep me safe, I feel like you'd act differently. So make yourself known in the comments so we can continue this conversation, so you can help me process how and why we still have sundown towns, and what are we doing, each of us, in our spheres of influence to not have them anymore. See you next week.